One of the most mind-boggling movies of recent times that left the audience excited, annoyed, thrilled, and itching their heads in confusion, No Sudden Move made people feel a lot of things at once. And in case it had you feeling like the mystery was left unsolved, we took the plunge and re-watched it so you don't have to. Let's close the case with a thorough investigation of what went down and how the characters could have survived No Sudden Move. First up, don't be greedy. Now starting off, first things first. We all know that almost every character in No Sudden Move is motivated by lust and greed. There are no redeeming qualities about any of them whatsoever, and it's a consistent theme throughout the film, whether it's Matt Wirtz, who pretends to care for his family while having an affair with his boss's secretary, Kurt Goynes, who only cared for Kansas City, or Roland Russo and Charlie. They're all driven by greed. Heck, Mike Lowen, played by Matt Damon, is a businessman first and foremost, and his primary purpose is to keep the catalytic converter design a secret for the advantage of the car companies he represents, which is what kickstarted the whole mess in the first place. Despite hinting at some pleasant qualities in him initially, the creators made sure that the audiences don't get attached to him, or any character for that matter. So we feel, and it may sound cliche, but don't be greedy to begin with, and maybe don't be so blinded by material things if they're going to cost you, your life. What's all the money in the world if you end up with a bullet to the skull? And we saw plenty of those go down throughout the film. Charlie and Russo would have stayed alive. Vanessa could have found love in Russo and could finally lead a wholesome life. Everything would have been so perfect had they not been so blinded by greed. But then, No Sudden Move wouldn't have been the amazing movie it is. Anyway, and the law could have prevented this. Don't you hate when films lack subtlety? Especially when they try to communicate ideas literally and end up making some excellent storylines so sloppy just to make sure the audience gets it. More like spoon feeding. But this movie doesn't go down that road at all. Instead, it creates scenarios and moral dilemmas for the audience to analyze, such as this one question that keeps popping up in the minds of many. Given that John Hamm's character is crooked, why does he return all of the money to Mike Lowen? We see Finney accept the $50,000 bribe from Watkins, only to give it back to Lowen along with the extra $30,000, handing him a total of $450,000. And then, the detective is happy for a mere $88 bottle of whiskey as his reward? We think it's likely because A, he wants to play by the rules that the rich set, which we'll get into later. Let's keep this train rolling for now. B, it's a metaphor for how the law is willing to compromise when it comes to the interest of billionaires and the super rich among us. Or C, there's no law, it's just the rich calling the shots. In a way, the movie attempts to shed light on how the law treats a section of the masses very differently from the rest. Had detectives like Finney and his crooked gang of cops actually done their job instead of pleasing the rich among them for personal benefits, things in No Sudden Move, and even in the real world, would have unfolded differently. Imagine Finney putting an end to this madness by refusing bribes and not covering up Lowen, Watkins, and many others' crimes. Now, the lack of communication. We also think there was a very evident problem throughout the plot. A lot of characters acted on their presumptions and suspicions. There was zero interaction and plans of action between them. Take this scenario, for example. When Kurt and Roland decide to hear it from Mike Lowen as well, following a cue from Matt's boss, Lowen is willing to pay a whopping $375,000 for the super valuable docs they have. At the same time, we see Watkins taking money from Naismith and confronting Kurt and Ronald, who'd also already taken money from Lowen by that point. This leads to a whole lot of confusion, new rivalries, and some unnecessary bloodbath that could have been avoided had they actually communicated their interests and worked towards a mutual understanding. Even shady business requires some level of strategy, communication, and loyalty for it to work. Next, Matt should have told the truth. Besides that, we can't help but wonder why couldn't Matt just tell Kurt, Ronald, and Charlie the truth about the file in the locker? It wasn't his to begin with. His boss wasn't around. And what could possibly go wrong? At best, he'd have lost his job. Sounds so much better than losing your life, right? But Matt, being a dummy, decides to hand over the wrong documents to Doug. We get it. He does it to save his family. But why not just tell them that it isn't there, and they should just check with his boss? Had he actually spoken the truth, maybe No Sudden Move wouldn't have gone down the trajectory it did. did, and Russo should have trusted his gut. Now, many of you may have noticed that in the initial scenes, we see Russo purportedly not give Vanessa the suitcase with money. When they're leaving the hotel room, he makes her take the bigger one, and then follows with the smaller suitcase, which actually has the money. We think he didn't give her the bag with the money because he didn't trust her 100% yet, and feared that she'd drive away with the money. And then, in one of the last few scenes, we see Russo taking the money and running to share with his lover, Vanessa, who in, arguably, the film's most dazzling twist, shoots him dead so she can have the money all to herself. His instinct that she was all about the cash was proven right in the end, but to be fair, he would never have thought she'd go so far as to actually kill him, but things would have unfolded differently had he trusted his gut. Always trust your gut, guys. Next, follow the rules. The film's thought-provoking underlying message is that people powerful enough to set the rules, no matter where they fall on the moral spectrum, will always win. So how about, when they set the rules, you just follow them? Now don't get us wrong, we are anything but conformists, but in situations where your life, as well as others around you, are threatened by some actions, why not just, go with the flow and avoid huge sums of sus cash? Kurt is arguably the main character, considering he's the one who got to walk away with something, most importantly, with his life and everything on him intact, despite not getting to keep a single cent of the money that he made through his deal with Lowen. Why? Because thanks to Ronald, he ends up getting played, who in turn gets played by Vanessa. It's all quite confusing, so let's dumb it down a bit. Everyone knows how gullible Ronald is, and how easy it was to fool him, and this is why he gets manipulated by Vanessa, who pretends to be a domestic abuse victim. She then takes the money, which was actually Kurt's, kills him, and then doesn't get to keep any of it either after getting caught by the cops, who then give it back to Lowen. The huge sum of cash went full circle, literally getting everyone killed left, right, and center, and yet they don't take the darn cue. Keep away from large amounts of sus money. Next, be like Kurt. Also, Kurt's smart when it comes to dealing with the big fish. It was his loyalty, if that's what it was, with Lowen, which gets him out of a threat through Detective Finney, who's, by the way, on the payroll of Mike Lowen. In another scene, we see Kurt rip the document in half and split it between him and Ronald, and establish trust between them. He knows the kind of super shady business they're getting into, and he knows what Roland thinks of him thanks to his racist tirade in the beginning. So Kurt goes ahead and makes sure the guy he's allied with at least has his back. Not to mention how wary and observant he is of people around him, which becomes very evident when he first meets Doug Jones. Kurt quickly questions who he works for and why he's there, establishing him as cautious and someone who's always trying to figure out the complete ladder or order of who's working for who. He's also taken by Watkins at one point, and despite their animosity towards each other, which makes many think they'll be seeing the end of Kurt, he's mercifully spared. Why? Because he doesn't play games and straight up gives the Don what he wants. Watkins then decides to let him go, also giving him the promised $5,000 for the file he was to retrieve. Kurt did a lot of things right and was one of the very few who made it out alive. So we'd say, to survive no sudden move, you should probably do as he did. Stay ahead of the curve. And that's a wrap for this video. What other ways can you think of escaping no sudden move? Comment below and let us know. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more. See you in the next one.